So my name is Mike Dayton. I'm Chief Growth Officer for Shockoe. We're a perennial sponsor for Brand Innovators. We build custom mobile apps and digital experiences, and we do it for roughly 10% of the Fortune 500, including a number of big brands, but we're not really brand marketing experts. We're technology experts and digital experience experts. And we'll get into that more, but I got to make a quick plug is that if you really like these paper agendas for the Brand Innovators events, you can hate us when they go away in Cannes, which is the next event. So we built the mobile app for Brand Innovators, which will help you plan your day, plan the agenda, plan the things you want to participate into, and hopefully in future versions, hopefully improve your networking, peer networking experience as well at future events. So with that, I got my plug out of the way. Nobody's here to see me, Anna. But I'm very, very excited that you're here, and I'd like you to introduce yourself. And I was reading an article that was published based on an interview you did at Miami Art Show back in December. And when I told my wife that I was going to be interviewing you, her first words were, "Esprit, are they still around?" Right? But then I read the article and how you basically staged a comeback at Banana Republic of that brand. And so I have a lot of admiration for what you've accomplished. So yes, we're supposed to be talking about AI and tech, but I was actually inspired by what you've done and the challenge of taking on what you're taking on with Esprit. So if you could just introduce yourself a little bit and tell the audience, and then we'll get into the techie, nerdy stuff we're supposed to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's a right reaction. Is Esprit still around? Well, yeah, it's back. It never went away in Europe. It did go away in North America, but that was the brand of the 80s and the 90s. And people remember it fondly, believe it or not. They're like, oh my God, I wore Esprit throughout my high school. I lived in Esprit. I wore it to my prom and so on. So that was a big and wonderful challenge to tackle on to bring some brand that hasn't been around for so long, but it has such a strong cultural capital, emotional capital with it. And it also tackles really well what I did prior at Banana Republic when there was a rebrand. My remit was to rebrand the entire company, to change everything from product to visual merchandising to design to marketing to campaigns to aesthetics to expression. And thank God that led to 27% year-on-year growth, which is unheard of in retail. So there was like always finding the right time in culture and the right time in the brand, and then the sales follow. But the product needs to be great. So that's what I do.
So you also, as I understand it, you contribute to a McKinsey group as well, a group of
as a CMO network, yes, as a CMO group. So when they have something about AI or the use of AI in marketing organizations, or when they have how to revamp a fashion week, they would reach out and I would offer my take.
Very cool. Well, I'm sure we're going to get into some of the outcomes of the McKinsey studies on AI as well, especially in relative to the fashion industry. But let's talk about reality of where you are right now with Esprit in the business environment. We've had a number of topics, talking about ROI and justification, and how do you bring the business case for technology investment or AI to your cross-functional leadership and gain buy-in. And we had one speaker here 2 days ago. I think she was a marketing executive with Rite Aid, who is actually going through a bankruptcy restructuring right now. So that adds to the pressure. So what's been your experience so far when it comes to gaining alignment with the e-commerce team or the IT organization, and how do you kind of work that magic and get what you feel like the brand needs to support it from a tech perspective?
Well, I would, let's take a step back first and then see where is the need, or what is the context. If you are a fashion apparel brand and then you're approached by AI vendor or technology company or an agency that works with, the first question is like, okay, let's see what we can do, and how is that going to advance the brand and the business? So that is what first happened. So when I talked very early on in my tenure, it was probably the end of 2022, it was very useful to kind of understand. We were coming back to North American market, so the website needed redesigning. The stores have not been opened yet. Distribution centers haven't been set up, so it was premature to talk about AI. At the same time, it's important to understand the scenarios that are going to help us throughout the entire value chain. So that conversation centered mostly on media and our own content owned and operated properties. So in terms of media, it was personalization of messaging, it was personalization of creative that different audiences are going to see. Is Gen X going to see it, who is very familiar with the brand, or is Gen Z going to see it, who doesn't have any idea who or what Esprit is, or millennial. So that was the first scenario we talked about. Then the second scenario we talked about is about how can we amplify and facilitate the content production for our website in terms of, if you have millions of SKUs, SKUs for all the products, the description of those products is very cumbersome and time-consuming task for any copywriter, product copywriter. So that's something where AI really comes in. We decide if we say, hey, these are the key properties. These are the key reasons why people return those items. Is it fit? Is it the quality of material? Is it the color palette? Whatnot. And then address it. So that was the second scenario. The third scenario was customer segmentation, because one of the first things I did early in 2023 was to do customer segmentation and understand who the audience is globally, in Asia, in Europe, and in North America. And we ended up with two big audience segments. Within those audience segments, AI, we explored how can AI help us. And our media team, actually, when we had a media team last fall, did further segmentation of that customer audience. And that is where AI came invaluable, segmentation, and then second, sentiment analysis.
That's really interesting. One of the things that I think about, because I am a Gen Xer and I do remember the Esprit brand, and I remember it kind of at the same time as Benetton, and there seemed to be a lot of similarities in terms of culture and global culture, international culture, connecting with people of different cultures together. How do you see AI help? What do you think like the strengths and weaknesses of AI are when it comes to multicultural, marketing? How well does it adapt, from country to country, from culture to culture?
Well, I think it's looking for similarities as well as being sensitive to differences. So I don't think that there is language differences. So that is where it's unbelievably helpful, because there are 32 different languages that every single copy, every single sales material in stores, collateral needs to be translated to. So that's on that most basic operational level. And then when you have different generations, that is what I said at the beginning, when basically you adjust which audience is going to see which message with which creative. And that is where the targeting really comes in, micro-targeting. The second really important use that we used is in our CRM, in our customer database segmentation, but that's less of a cultural generation and more by the purchase history, location, average order value, cart abandonment, so on. So you can say, hey, ChatGPT, give me only emails that are, say, in Berlin, or give me only those who went above 100 euros mark, and so on. So in that segmentation, that really helps doing the content of our email, the scheduling of that messaging, the offers that we're doing, the sales promotions, and so on, the copy and content. So there is a lot of granular things in retail that is facilitated by AI.
So that's what's facilitated by AI. Where do you feel like AI is not quite ready for prime time yet?
I mean, it's the amount of data that it has, because you're always, if you're in a company, you're always operating with your own data that you have. You don't have big market analysis, big competitive analysis. You always look at what is available out there, what is what are the AI algorithms trained on? And that obviously is, number one, the amount of data that they currently have, which is a shortcoming if you have just your own isolated data within your company. And then second of all is when you come to internal operational organizational HR stuff is the biases that are designed into AI through human biases. So that is something where we still need to figure things out with hiring, with scanning resumes, and so on.
So as you look at like biases, that's just an extension of humanity as well, right? So that's really nothing new, and you have to manage it. When we were talking earlier, we talked about things that I think you broke down AI in like two categories about here are things that AI can help humans do faster. I think you had like sales forecasting, CRM, the things you just mentioned. And then there was a category of like, here are things that AI does for us. I mean, other use cases in the fashion industry. And then I want to talk a little bit about the McKinsey study and some of the findings from that.
So yeah, the first one is how AI amplifies what we are already doing, which is customer segmentation, CRM, database segmentation. It will take humans like weeks to do that. It's like much faster. So one is just like efficiency and speed. And then the other thing is that it does what humans do. For example, in design process, you have a big part of design process is gathering inspiration, putting together mood boards. That is something that AI does. But again, it's one of those things when it's like, oh, which way is it gonna go? Are you gonna pay for a concept director, or are you just gonna say, hey, AI, give me the 1980s San Francisco fashion, everything needs to be in pastels, you know? So that is kind of something that that is useful already. And then it's like sketch reviews, and then looking at trend reviews. So that's all done in a way that can go both ways. Either a human can do that or an AI can do that. It really is a matter of investment. And if you're in a mass market fashion brand, you're probably gonna just go like, hey, AI, just give me that, or just tell me like, oh, what is happening on social media? What's trending on social media? Give me those shapes, give me those colors, and let's do that. If you're more of a luxury fashion brand that is setting the vision, then you're probably not gonna do that.
So talk about your work. I know you don't work for McKinsey, but you're part of a CMO group and part of studies that they put on. Talk about a little bit about like because they're obviously a big thought leader in the business, in a lot of businesses. Where does the survey results like lead you to believe things are heading, and what were some of the outcomes of that survey that you found to be most interesting and most profound?
Is that we're still in a very experimental stages, that there is still a lot of opportunities and challenges to address, but those challenges, opportunities is most understanding how does this use case connect with my operations, with my organization, with my business results? How do I justify this ROI? And how is this better than what I did before? So it's kind of assessing the impact. That's number one. Number two is what I have seen from that study, from the conversation that ensued at that breakfast, was basically that people are curious to learn more. They're not ready to act yet. And then so far, everything is test and learn. So for example, when you have Estee Lauder using AI to have interactive features in their stores, it's a test and learn scenario. When Levi's is using AI to personalize fit, it's test and learn. It's not like, oh, we know exactly what we're going to get from it, and this is better from how we were doing things before because of X, Y, Z. So that is my learning. However, the bigger picture is that entire value chain, there is a room for AI, from connecting supply and demand, the beginning to production, finding the best materials, connecting the best materials, designing, to merchandising, seeing what is the white space on the competitive landscape, all the way to marketing, which I talked about, content optimization, CRM optimization, customer segmentation, all down to creative output and so on. Customer service. I think we are the closest in retail in customer service.
So there's two words that you could almost play drinking games to when you come to these conferences. Of course, AI, and then these conferences, it's all about authenticity. So I coined the phrase last night at dinner. AI stands for authenticity interrupted. What do you do in terms of being a brand marketer and trying to give your customers, your fans, your shoppers, depending on what business you're in, how do you kind of monitor the authenticity of the brand experience in this age of AI?
It's all about the overall brand experience. When you have a very clear idea what your point of view is, what your experience is about. Say, like, for example, if Apple was all about the creativity, if Amazon is all about convenience, is Disney is all about the magic, that's that experience anchor. Everything they do needs to be magical, family-oriented, so on. So that's what the brand stands for. You define first what the anchor of that experience is, what is the core emotion there. And then everything else that comes from their AI or no AI, because we were talking about the same thing when social media showed up, when digital media showed up. And I'm not saying that this is not a quantum leap, because it is. It's more like you deliver the experience that is on-brand experience. So even when you have the customer service, they're using the keywords that are for that brand, or you define the parameters that are saying no one should wait more than like 30 seconds if you're Amazon, if convenience is your main, or if your magic is yours, then you intersperse images or videos or so on. So it all comes from that central experience definition, and then stores, website, even wholesalers, social media, everything, every brand touch point, every brand expression delivers the same experience.
So I've recently played. I mean, a lot of us have been playing with as many tools as we find out about tools all the time, right? I've actually been playing around with some tools that I heard about at this event, right? And but when I look at things like Synthesia, like real AI generated people talking, giving a message, and okay, you can kind of see that it's a little bit robotic, but this is Gen 1. I just wonder like where that's going in terms of the future and what's real, what's not. Because I've been in technology for over 30 years, more than I want to admit, but I've seen a lot of the Gartner hype cycles come and go, and I've seen things like going back to original pen computing, back even before Palm Pilot, right? Going back to the invention of the iPhone. Now you have your email and your phone on one device. I don't know if that's probably more of a curse than a blessing to me now. I couldn't wait for it at the time. But then, RFID, cloud computing, all these different big technology waves. And as I've looked back on them all, they have all kind of had a, kind of an impact on society. Certainly social, I think, has been a huge one. Cloud computing for me, it was just a more modern way of doing something that actually existed back in the 1970s, where big companies would buy a mainframe and they would do what they call time sharing. So multiple companies would run their payroll apps on the mainframe. But AI, Shelley said, you got to form your own opinions. And my opinion is this is at least in my lifetime, the most disruptive technology, and it could be disruptive I think it'll be a combination of disruption in a good way and a bad way. I think we got to take the bad with the good, and we got to work our way through it, because there's opportunity for greatness and there's opportunity for a lot of badness too. But I'm amazed by it, and I think if you had, what would AI have done for you back in the Banana Republic days? What would have been different if you had generative AI and the tools we have today back when you went through the brand resurrection of Banana Republic, which ended up being very successful?
Just more efficient, because I don't think that we're still able to say, hey, that would be like, for example, Moncler did AI generated campaign, and that's good for Moncler because they're known as experimental luxury fashion brand. They introduced Moncler Genius, and they're experimenting with new business models. That's good for them. I don't think we would do that for Banana Republic, because not what the brand is about. So in a sense, I understand where you're coming from. It's also kind of one size doesn't fit all. You're not going to just do something to do something. We're obviously going to see how retail shapes further, and it's going to be very totally reshaped. But at this point in time, it just did that time horizon is just not long enough for me to say, oh my God, it will be so different. It will be more efficient. Segmentation would probably be much faster, what we did, because that entire study It was done through humans have done it. The service, we would probably get more people there. We would probably have more granular segmentation. We would probably have a better CRM database. But then again, at this point, it's still incremental. It's not exponential at this point. I don't know how it's going to be next year.
I think we're going to get there probably sooner than later. Hopefully, just we're not redoing things. We don't go exponentially in like a wrong direction. But so this is a huge undertaking for you. It must be exciting, and I know you have other interests. And I think you have don't you have a blog or a newsletter or some type of
a newsletter, Sociology of Business.
Sociology of Business. Talk about that. What is that?
Well, I mean, I think that maybe for this audience, let's maybe stay still with the business side of AI. I'm happy to have my own plug, but I think they want to. So one big thing that you and I discussed in prep for this call was basically how do you justify investment in AI? Because those things are not cheap. And what the roadblock that I came across is that as a chief marketing officer, chief brand officer, you have a remit that's creative, that's marketing and media planning, and then that's strategy, brand strategy, content strategy, social strategy, PR, and so on. You don't necessarily have e-commerce under you. And CRM, database segmentation, that's under. The quality traffic coming to the site, that's under e-commerce. The segmentation is under e-commerce. So they're basically the ones making decisions. So organizationally, the different departments need to be aligned to say, hey, we are going to invest in AI. This is the resources we have. This is the return on those investments that we are going to get. And then it really needs to happen on the C-suite level, on the CEO, senior leadership level, and saying, hey, and CFO level say, hey, this is the investment that we're going to make. And if we're hoping that our P&L is going to be this is the percentage that we're expecting. And even if you do test and learn, you need to say minimum return needs to be X, Y, Z. So I think from a get-go, AI can't be a shiny object that the marketing or creative uses. It needs to be, hey, if you're using it for personalization to improve our fit, which means we are going to reduce the return of our products, which are going to reduce the amount that we are spending on hosting those products, on kind of overhead that we have in our distribution centers. You see how everything is connected. So that conversation is really a strategic conversation on a corporate level, business conversation, rather than isolated conversation, oh, it's a supply, or it's merchandising, or it's marketing.
So from a pure finance perspective, CFOs can look at the world sometimes strategically, but it really comes down to two things. You're either going to increase the top line or you're going to reduce cost. Like in your work so far in terms of justifying in doing ROI analysis on AI specifically for Esprit, where do you see the bigger impacts? On the revenue side or the cost side?
AI. We did it just the only implementation was in media, for customer segmentations and so on. Because as I said at the beginning, the stage of development of the company, getting back to it's just the timing was not right. But in general, if I'm to go and I say, hey, we want to do that, I would say, let's see what is low-hanging fruit. What are the key efficiencies and key improvements we can expect? Is it going to be a better segmentation? Is it going to be better customer relationship management? Is it going to be a better product information so we reduce returns? Is it going to be a sort of better information for our customers so they're making faster decisions and convert faster? So I would look at that and then would probably project how is that going to contribute to the bottom line if we have X less returns, if we have X bigger average order value, if we have X bigger conversion, and then go from there.
Well, so there's really nothing new under the sun. It's incremental at this point, but it could be exponential, and I guess we'll have to wait and see. We've got about 5 minutes left in the time slot here, and I don't want to hog all the time here because we've got a phenomenal brand marketer here who's an underdog and came out punching once with Banana Republic, and now you're doing that. Now you're doing Esprit. So I want to open it up to questions from the audience. And Vito's got a mic.
Anybody have any questions? No questions?
What is your experience, guys? I saw some of you were writing things down. Would you disagree? Would you add something?
One of the things that I think has been probably undercovered or underreported is just what's the low-hanging fruit, right? So there's all the back-end functions, what Mike is talking about, and then there's, I think really big opportunities, especially with things like customer service, right? Depending upon how much someone drank last night, depending upon what they ate this morning, like it really dictates the quality of that service, and AI just seems like a very obvious fit for something like that, right? But what we have now is so bad, right? You call any company now, and it's.
I think it does work in the first few steps. I love your question and remark, absolutely. I think it does work in terms of weeding out and segmenting where the inquiries go, but it can't be too long. That's the thing, because right now, as you said, it's not great, and people get the hang of it, and it's like, I'm not talking to a human, like, why am I here? Give me the agent, But I do think that there is a role, because there's so many inquiries. Some of them are as basic as, how do I return this? Or, what is your store phone number? Why do you need a human for that, So I think it's kind of, yes, there's definitely low-hanging fruit, and I think that's the area that's fastest growing, and innovation is mostly happening there and getting more personalized.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. So I'm just curious, I'll ask another question of the audience. How have your perceptions, or what, like, has there been like an aha, like, pearl of wisdom that you guys have picked up here in the past 3 days around AI and technology? And like, what's been your learning, your key learning here?
Are designers that you're working with of different age groups, young designers, experienced designers, are they starting to look at AI and incorporating into their thinking and their design process? And is it different from generation to generation?
It's different from person to person, because you have a Norma Kamali designer who is, if you say older generation, not like established brand, that she's using her archives, and she's using AI to design new things based on her archives. So basically, as a continuation of her legacy of her fashion aesthetics, she's using AI based on that information. So that is one new scenario that more brands can use, but don't. So again, that's one. Even younger designers don't do that. I would say that with younger designers, as well as with all younger people, there is basically a situation when they're aware of it. And I think that with sketching and with inspiration, that's happening more and more. For mood boards, for saying, hey, what is trend right now? That's a shortcut. And I know in design schools, they're using AI a lot in their projects for that. So if you do that in school, you're most likely to use it later in your career as well. Thank you. There is one more.
I was wondering if since it's coming back to the North America area, is the idea to attract folks of the Gen X era with a new line, or was the idea to attract a younger demographic that can be introduced to Esprit?
It's both, and it's like what I call 2-for-1 strategy. So you have Gen X and Gen Z. Gen X, that cultural nostalgia in the 80s and 90s, that is like very easy shortcut, cultural shortcut to get. So what we did is a vintage shop and archive reissue. So everything you remember with the big logo sweatshirts and tracksuits and like everything the design direction goes around the original. Like, what are the signature products, what is the signature aesthetic, and how you grow from there. That's from Gen X. For Gen Z, who are buying things on Depop, on eBay, and ThreadUp, and so on, they may have been buying Esprit without even knowing it. So for them, it's like that is the entry point. The vintage, the second-hand, the archive reissue is the entry point. And what we've been seeing in our stores, that mothers and daughters come in and buy the same things for two different reasons. One is nostalgia. The second is like, oh, this looks so 80s. I love this cut. I love that. So that is 2-for-1 audience, but that's a great question. I hope you buy something. Yeah, there is a store in Soho, yeah.
There's a store in Soho. So when you leave here, go straight there.
Yeah.
Anna, thank you so much.
I think there
oh,
was
we
one
got- we-
more.
I think we're at time. I was just gonna do the transition. So thank
Oh,
you so much,
wonderful.
Anna.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.